This is Dale Andreatta, and as the old Benny Hill joke used to go, I'm coming to you from the privy of my own home. Actually, I'm in the kitchen, which is appropriate for this conference. This conference is mostly about cooking energy, but my talk today will focus primarily on the use of solar energy for non-cooking household energy needs, primarily heating water, but a lot of other things too. I'll now show a short video, rather a portion of a video that I put online a few months ago, and at the end of this presentation I'll give a link to the whole video. The simplest device is shown here with a clear top, a black plastic floor, and inexpensive solid insulation such as straw under the black plastic. Things to be heated or dried go under the clear plastic where they get hot. Here we have 2 buckets of water, one full and one 3/4 full. Each one has a temperature logger to record the temperature, and we can see that on a sunny day, both buckets achieve or nearly achieve 60 degrees Celsius. You can do many other things at the same time, such as drying firewood, purifying smaller containers of drinking water, drying grain, or preheating cooking water to a temperature of up to 70 degrees using the same pot as is used for cooking, and heating clothing to a temperature sufficient to kill insect eggs. Now the downside of this device is that you have to move those heavy buckets of water around, so a possible improvement is to run a copper pipe through the buckets. Cold water flowing through the tube picks up heat from the water in the buckets. Here is the completed system, where the water flows from left to right through the copper tube. This shows the outlet tube temperature on the left and the temperature of the last bucket in the series on the right. The water can never come out as hot as the buckets, but it can come out close. When the water is first turned on, you get a slug of very hot water from the water that was sitting in the copper coil. Then the temperature cools to a steady value, here about 46.5 degrees, as the heat in the buckets is steadily transferred to the flowing water. The advantage of this system is that you can get a large amount of hot water just by opening a valve. A likely application might be in a home that already has piped cold water and wants to have piped hot water, but they don't want to pay for an electric hot water heater or the electricity to run it. And you can still dry wood, dry grain, and do all those other things you can do with the basic device. Now if you only want to heat water, then the best performance is achieved by replacing the buckets with trays, since each tray gets hotter than the buckets. Each tray here has about 5 centimeters of water, under which there is black plastic and solid insulation, and on top of which is a clear plastic layer to prevent evaporation, then a second plastic layer with an insulating air gap between the two. In the foreground, we have the tray system with a collection area of about 3 square meters, and in the background is the bucket system, also with 3 square meters. The trays always get hotter than the buckets. Here the last tray temperature is on the right, with the outlet temperature on the left. As with the buckets, you get a slug of very hot water at the start, then the temperature settles down to a steady value. On this test, the steady value is about 53.5. That temperature will slowly decrease as the trays decrease in temperature. The temperature of the water coming out of the water mains is 21 Celsius. The water flow for most of the tests I'm showing is 4.5 liters per minute. At this flow rate, we get a steady outlet temperature of 53.5 for a long time. But when my off-camera assistant reduces the water flow by 50%, then the outlet temperature goes up, reducing the flow here. And you can see the outlet temperature rising now. Eventually it will stabilize at about 62 degrees. Thus you can vary the outlet temperature by varying the flow. For the hottest water possible, then you would use a low flow rate of 1 or 2 liters per minute, and the outlet is nearly as hot as the trays. If you want not so hot water, then increase the flow rate. The water has less time to pick up heat as it flows through the tube, and it comes out less hot than the trays, but still well above the inlet temperature. The application here might be a small hotel or light industry that already has a water heater, either electric or wood-fired, and they want to save energy by preheating the water with the sun. If you do a web search for inexpensive solar water heaters, you'll find a lot of devices to put out a small amount of hot water, but I believe nothing this simple that puts out a lot of hot water. Now here, we're at the end of a 100-liter water draw, which took over 20 minutes. You can see the 5 buckets full of water in this view, which contain a total of 100 liters. The trays have cooled to about 50 degrees, and the outlet temperature is also cooled, but it's still well above the inlet temperature. Now looking at detailed results from a mostly sunny day, on this day I drew 3 15-liter buckets of water with short pauses through the tray system. As the water is drawn, the tray temperatures drop, then in the pauses, the tray temperatures hold steady. The first tray in the series drops the most, since it has only cool water flowing through its copper tube, while the last tray in the system has only warm water flowing through its tube. Thus, less heat is pulled out of the last tray. The trays are all still well above the inlet temperature. In this graph, the gray line shows the water flow rate, and you can see that the first 15-liter bucket was filled somewhat slowly at 41 grams per second, or 2.5 liters per minute. The second and third buckets were filled faster. Slower flows lead to higher temperatures. Looking now at the blue outlet temperature curve, at the start of each draw, the first few liters are very warm, almost as warm as the trays, since that is the water that was sitting in the tube for several minutes. Then the outlet water cools to a steady value as a balance is struck between the heat flowing from the hot tray to the cooler tube versus the heat being gained by the water flowing through the tube. Even after a total of 45 liters have been drawn, the outlet water is still well above the inlet temperature, and this condition would continue for a long time. I believe that no other simple solar system is capable of putting out this large of a quantity of hot water. Systems like the one shown here work well, but they're expensive. Even in Kenya, these systems cost about $1,100. The swimming pool heater shown here is simple and puts out a lot of warm water, but not hot water. And then finally, this simple do-it-yourself system is of course simple, and it gets the water very hot, but it can produce only a small amount of hot water as there just isn't enough collection area to put out a lot of hot water. Now I promised 9 ways of using the sun. The first 3 methods shown here can put out a lot of hot water for washing or a number of other uses. These are in order from simplest to most complex. And then the other 6 methods are shown here. Drawing wood to make better fires, drying grain, pasteurizing drinking water, heating clothing to a temperature to kill insects and their eggs, preheating water for cooking so as to reduce fuel consumption. And then finally, I didn't say anything about space heating, but if you have 6 large buckets of hot water, you can use those to keep a house warm during a cool night. Finally, here's my contact information and a link to the entire video for which you saw a portion previously. Quite a bit of work can be done to optimize these systems for either maximum energy, maximum temperature, minimum cost, or whatever you like, so contact me for more information.